This is the GGJ Podcast, a show about the games industry, the people who make them, and the communities that grow up around them. I'm Susan Gold, a game education trailblazer and one of the founders of the Global Game Jam. Each week, we will be sitting down with a new guest, highlighting their own path and journey. This is a space for honest conversation from makers about creativity, collaboration, failure, and the messy, the beautiful reality of making games. So whether you're a young dev or seasoned, an educator, a student, or someone who just loves games and the people behind them, welcome to the GGJ Podcast. Take a breath, settle in, and let's hear directly from the makers themselves.
This episode is made possible in partnership with the Global Game Jam, the world's largest game creation event, bringing together creators from around the globe. A big thank you as well to the Global Game Jam's headline sponsors, Epic Games, Games for Change, and Xsola, for helping make this creative community a reality. To learn more and to get involved in the upcoming jams, visit globalgamejam.org.
Today's guest is someone who means a lot to me personally and professionally. He's not just a leader in the games industry, he's also one of my oldest industry friends and a mentor who helped shape how I think about the game industry, what fortitude really means, and what resilience is. Alexander Fernandez is the CEO and co-founder of Streamline Media Group, a studio he helped form from a tiny apartment operation into a global development and digital solutions company working on franchises like Final Fantasy, Gears of War, Bioshock Infinite, James Cameron's Avatar, but he also looks for the future and other possible game collaborations with brands like Coca-Cola and Balenciaga. And then over more than 2 decades in games, he and his team have contributed to over hundreds of productions and some of their own. They have generated billions in revenue, and Alex is one of those people who is constantly thinking about the future. He's also the voice behind Video Games Real Talk and Startup. He and his team are dominating the global south. He's deeply focused on using games and technology to create opportunities, and he works very closely to close that digital divide. Alex, as my friend, I want to thank you for being here. It's really special for me to really get to share your story with everyone listening.
Oh, thanks for having me again. Congratulations for this. So this is super cool that we get an opportunity to talk. I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, I think your story is particularly interesting only because I've known you for so long. I have seen your growth. And when I say I met Alexander when 2006? I don't even know how old you were then.
I was 25 when we met.
So we've known each other for a long time, but for listeners who are meeting you for the first time, how do you introduce yourself and how do you talk about Streamline and Startup?
Yeah. So hi, I'm Alexander Fernandez. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Streamline Media Group and Streamline Studios. I've been making video games for 25 years. Effectively, what we do is we connect the global south, the global north, in order to help people make hardcore AAA games that basically make a difference in this industry. But we also work with brands and we work with other interested parties who see the video games industry as more of a tool for economic development and social prosperity. So we do a lot of that work as well.
I've always been so proud of you, and I've really watched this growth and depth, but you've always had a real mentality of, I am not skating here. And I always feel like you're always working like today is the first day of the job. That startup mentality is in your persona and philosophy. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, no problem. So the startup mentality, the reason why we call it starving up is because startups have money. Streamline had no money when it started. We literally had $15,000 in dreams. We were 20 years old, living in Amsterdam. And the only way we could do it was basically say, you know what we don't have in cash, we have in time and our youthfulness. Let's go ahead and starve our way up. And that's what we did. We starved ourselves to get the business to where it needed to be. And I think that ultimately that persona never left because the ingrained attitude of who we are as people and who I am as a person, we never had it easy. It was always a challenge. We started the company in 2001, dot bomb had exploded. Then it's war on terror. Then it's the financial crisis. Then it's another war. Then it's basically the games industry destroying itself. It's constant build up, destroy. And in that process, you understand and you start to realize how life is patterns and everything turns to pattern recognition at one moment in time. And the longer you live and the longer you focus on something, the more you begin to realize how it works. And once you understand how something works and then understand the patterns, you're able to ride them. And this is ultimately what Startup is about, is that live long enough in something, you will see it repeat itself. And once you understand that, it's all yours in the end.
That's beautiful. I want to go back to how you met the four guys that lived in that apartment. You're one of four, right? And your brother was the other, and then two other people?
Yeah. So Hector came in actually a year later. So my
Oh,
twin brother
okay.
is Hector. So how we all know each other is that we met on bulletin board systems. So back in the mid 90s, we used to basically connect to local bulletin board BBSs where we would basically exchange mail and use modems and try to find software that we would all enjoy and effectively understand how the internet was forming pre-internet. This is before the World Wide Web, really. So we met some friends that were modding games. We were modders back then, modding Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem, and we ended up all meeting with each other. I was 15 years old when I met my co-founders and partners. They were in Utah working on a game called the Gunman Chronicles, what would ultimately become the Gunman Chronicles. And we met through a friend's brother who had put the team together. Jump cut to 2001. I moved to Amsterdam. I say get a job working in IT. And my brother one day sends me a message saying, "Hey, the guys from Gunman are there. You should meet." And April 1st, I drove up to go see them to a place called Hilversum. We met and I'm like, "We should start a company." They're like, "We are doing a company." I'm like, "Let's do it then." And that's how Streamline effectively started to take off. It started to form at that moment in time. Rainier Beninga, Stefan Bayer, Adrian Beninga, Rainier's brother, original guys that were there. And then Hector came a year and a half later. And we just started basically building this company. And it was an interesting experience because none of us were from Holland.
Um, those early years, I'm sure you thought that there were days that were total disasters. Give me a little idea of what did it teach you to do? You
Yeah.
could all live on €1,000 a month, which is not possible now, but what did it teach you?
Okay. I want to first address the fact that, yeah, you couldn't do this again because of the economic differences, right? Cost of inflation and everything. But there's a reality that basically you learn pretty quick that if you don't have money and you're young, you have time, and you realize that time becomes currency. So realistically, very quickly, what I began to understand is that I can use time and energy to replace money by pushing myself and using all that energy and all that time to get ahead of the curve of what I'm trying to do. And specifically, what I mean by that is that extra moment to put in that extra email, to do that extra phone call, for us to spend that extra moment polishing that piece of the demo, to basically make that one additional thing that I would otherwise not do if I was just living a normal job and having a normal life. So once we understood time and energy as currency, what we then did is when we looked at money, so for the first 3 years, I didn't get a paycheck. Literally, it was just like starving and making it work, whatever money we could find, put back into the business. That basically helped me understand that what I want and what I need are two different things. I think this is one of the biggest analysis that people have to do. I want everything. Do I need everything? No. What is it that I really need? And then understanding what I really need, food, water, shelter, with the understanding that time and energy can be used as currency, we began to connect a construct of an understanding of a world in which, well, if we're going to go sacrifice the time and energy we have, our youth, trying to make it work in an industry, which at that moment in time wasn't even an industry for most people. I'll never forget the bank laughing in my face, being like, "Go get a job, kid, because this is not a business, it's a hobby." It was effectively understanding that we had to overcome all of these hurdles that were preconceived notions. Then at the same time, understand how the business is played within the industry we chose to be in, which happened to be video games. So I want to just say in a very simple way that when you choose to work in a specific industry, you need to really understand the economic patterns, the business patterns, the norms, the customs of that industry. But you also have to understand the seasonality of that industry, how things work and when they work at what point on the calendar. Once you learn that, you then take a step back and look at just the overall macro perspective of how does this industry work within the greater context of the economy, which then allows you to understand, well, if once those patterns start to repeat, and again, this is time and understanding, you begin to put these dots together. But of course, 20-year-old Alexander doesn't know any of that. 22-year-old Alexander starts to get an idea around it. But by 24 years, and we're starting to make in money, we're starting to really start make money. That's when we're like, oh, this is how it works. But it took 3 years to figure it out. 3 brutal years, 3 years in which I would never throw it on anybody. Yet at the same time, I love every minute of it, because when I think of my fondest memories, it's those memories. Those are what I think about.
I hear you. But I also hear someone that was determined that you were going to make games for a living, but you had that passion first, and then you were figuring out how to build a plane while flying it, got it. But at the same time, you had a team of people that were close, living in close quarters. How did you manage and handle inevitable disagreements and pressure in those years? How do you maintain relationships?
It's funny because I think you say something very clear, that when you understand the circumstances you're in, once you understand the dynamics of people, by understanding yourself, you're able to start to communicate properly. So first off, there's no science, there's no secret. Just be a human being that understands they're fallible, probably not the smartest, probably not the greatest, probably not all the negatives, and probably not all the positives either. But once we understand that neither one of us have an edge on what it means to be human, that's where you just face the reality that real talk, real conversation, real communication, structured by the altitude of the want and the desire to make it in this industry, to be in this business, and then the truth that we need each other to get there, that thins out the bullshit. I'm sorry, is this a G-rated show? I
No,
apologize for
it's not.
swearing. Okay, just to make sure. Well,
You
like,
can
cause
say
yeah.
whatever you
Okay, well,
want.
so here's the thing. It's like everybody wants to be agreeable, but life isn't agreeable. Life is conflict. And understanding conflict management and not being conflict avoidant is by far the single biggest thing I can tell anyone listening to this. If you are a person who runs away from disagreements or from conflict, you will not survive in this business. Or what will end up happening is you'll be put in a position where you will be utilized. That is the problem. And I think this is the key that we learned as early on as a group, is that we knew survival came down to all of us aligning, removing the ego, cutting the bullshit, and getting down with the work. And when you basically use economics as a way to focus on something, meaning that the higher we go up, the thinner the air, the less bickering you can do because you don't have enough air to breathe. That is how you be got there, because we learned super fast. I can either complain about something that really doesn't mean something, or I can focus on what pushes the agenda. And by doing that, snapped us in line. And you took a bunch of young kids, a bunch of 20-year-olds, and said, make video games, young men, and go do it and survive. And that's what it was. And so we didn't have to, what was there to argue about? I have nothing. Oh, so do you. Then there's plenty of it for all of us.
But then, you became successful. You went from $6,000 jobs to multi-million dollar
Yeah.
deals. And then in 2008, 2009, you kind of hit a wall. Can you
Yeah.
walk us through the moment when you realized that Amsterdam Studio might not survive?
Yeah. So here's the thing that's beautiful about this is, and I would set the stage for everyone to understand something. We started this company with 15 grand. We didn't know what it was going to become. All we wanted to do was make games, be 20 years old, live in Europe, live in Holland of all places, and, you know, video games, art, and Holland, which all go hand in hand. And so we were already winning and we were doing deals. By 2004, we were making over a million and it was just coming in. It was an incredible shift when that happened. But this is where you begin to realize that this industry is so dependent on the real economy in ways that people don't understand. And I think that for the first time, that the moment in time where these funny little things that we call a hobby was a real business really became clear during the financial crisis. So in 2007, I signed in around August, I had signed 15 million euros worth of deals, right? In US dollars, it was close to 20 million locked in. Huh? And this is it. Launchpad happens. Here we go. It's happening. But then in 2008, Lehman Brothers goes bankrupt, Bear Stearns collapses, and we start to see the financial crisis creep in because everyone deserved a home even if they couldn't pay for a home, and then Wall Street decided to sell it to everybody because what do they care? They're making money too. So the original video game finance was at its maximum hit. It's pushing it out, and we start seeing just how much video games is financed by credit. And it's financed by credit because who in their right mind is ever going to put money in video games? Let's just be honest about that. We know very straightforward that the hit ratio in this industry ain't that high. And there's a beautiful term in entertainment, OPM, other people's money. That's the same term we use. What is credit? What is debt? Nothing more than other people's money. So OPM was in this industry at such a rate that basically when the economic crisis started coming in, we began to watch client after client terminate projects or go bankrupt until finally, roughly a year and a half into this, everything caught up. And the moment I realized that this was probably going to end up being us having to shut down Amsterdam was that, like, it comes in bizarre moments. It was the moment in time that we end up having to basically look at the beauty of socialist democracies in which labor is protected, and then the brutal side of capitalism, which is winner takes all. When these two worlds collided with each other and created the most bizarre circumstance I ever saw, which is basically a simple thing. In the Netherlands at that time, they have a thing that you pay into, which is effectively insurance for your employees. You pay this insurance, which is basically a bankruptcy insurance, that says if this company closes, it will pay out what has been put into it for up to 3 months. At that moment in time, there was two things right in front of us that we saw. We could keep going, even though our clients were dying, or we could basically save our people and stop the studio in order for the insurance to kick in. And that was the decision we had to make. That decision is a very fascinating one because there is a true pull on whatever you believe in terms of people in business, whatever you believe is the obligations of entrepreneurs or not, doesn't matter. There was a thing where we had to face a real consequence of we can drag all these people with us, or we can basically choose insurance. But in that, the people that are going to eat, excuse my language, shit, are the people who own the business. And that's the decision we made. We decided for our people. They got the insurance. We got to eat shit. That's what it took. But I'll tell you, the reason why we did this and why I don't feel bad about it is because we understood one simple thing. Nobody forced us to start the company. And when you know no one forces you, I'm not going to feel sorry for myself. I'm going to basically live my life the way I know I need to live my life, which is take the accountability and the consequence of the actions that I've created. But this is the difference between me and a corporate person because I started this business when I was 20. I've lived here. This is my home. That's the difference.
How did you survive the whole thing? I mean, debt, your reputation. How did all of these decisions sit with you
Yeah.
personally?
So let's talk about reputation. Here's a beautiful thing about reputation. Reputation is literally your personality and who you are. So no one's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. It's what we do when they come out that defines you. So you have those who run away from things, promise things and don't deliver on them. Then you have those who basically blame other people. Then you have those who basically just tell you straight up, yeah, this is what happened, whether you like it or not. What I understood and what I've always seen about reputation is that the truth is what's clear. Tell the truth. They may not like it, but you know what? Truth is truth.
That is so true. Now,
Yeah.
you responded to this crisis by picking up the company or what's left of it and moving it to Malaysia.
Mhm.
What convinced you that relocating to Kuala Lumpur was the right way to go as opposed to shutting down and starting something new, someplace safer, like home, like the US, or maybe even the UK?
So this is where the story gets funny. And this is one of the greatest lessons I ever learned. When you look at the fact that the global financial crisis or the great financial crisis was caused by bankers and subprime and basically people lying across the board, selling things that were junk, running up tabs, I began to realize that even though we had done everything right, remember, we had millions of dollars of signed agreements, then they just evaporated. I realized that there's a world in which whatever we do, as great as we are, we will never be able to prevent the economy from being the economy, the way we can't prevent politics from being what they are. So we have to best learn how to surf those waves and sail those oceans. So at that moment in time, I began to realize as we looked at the business, there is a truth of running and making video games. It's labor intensive. At the time, computers were not cheap, but they weren't super expensive, and software was only getting more expensive. So, what we knew at that moment in time is that making video games in the Western world was going to become cost prohibitive. And we saw that from Amsterdam because the cost of running a business in Amsterdam was already high. We already saw the costs we were paying just to keep the business running. And it was a very simple prediction that if you look at it over the course of the next 10 years, it was going to continue to be expensive. So we started doing feasibility studies. We actually looked at 17 different cities around the world, did the feasibility studies. And then one day I get an invitation to go speak at a creative event in KL. I go there with my partner, Stefan. We show up there. And within 24 hours, we realize Malaysia is where we need to be. They have the talent. It's raw, untrained, but it's fluent in English and it has the desire. You have a government that's wanting to support and is supporting their people, and you're in a relatively cost effective part of the world. It ticked all the boxes. And at that moment in time, we're like, you know what? Malaysia is where it needs to be. And then it clicked with the economic thesis we had, which was very simply this: costs are only going to keep rising in the West and in the North. We need to make sure that we can catch the wave that is basically going to be the next generation and focus on that, which is what we did.
And you've really been a big part of growing the Malaysian game economy. I know that. When you landed in Malaysia and you started this rebuilding and you're thinking about all the things that happened in Amsterdam, what did you decide to do differently compared to what happened in the studio before? What were the things that you purposely went out of your way?
I think there were three major things. One is basically economics became the core focus of everything we did. Everything was economics. It was understanding our unit economics down to the hour spent. The second thing we did was basically we took our production platform Streamframe and we migrated it to the cloud because we realized we didn't want to spend time having to basically worry about workflow and process when we can just build it in and have it automated and then basically ensure that our clients can then talk to us. So remove the friction of delivery of work and development by automating the pieces that people really don't want to do anyway and let a computer do better. And that effectively is what we did. And the last thing, and I think is the most important thing, is really continue doing what we had done in Amsterdam, which is recognize that the world has talent. Talent generally doesn't always have a avenue to meet the world. So if we would build bridges in the global south before it was called the global south, we used to call it emerging markets. Basically is what we did. We said, you know what? I don't care where you're from. I don't care what you believe. I don't care what you think. As long as you love video games, you're willing to subscribe to the way we are making them, you have an opportunity with us. And keeping that, which was core to who we are and what started this business, we just started attracting people from all over the world. At one point, we had 45 nationalities and 25 different languages. It was like a little United Nations. It was crazy.
Was there any moment where you might have thought, oh, we might have made the wrong call here? And what did you do to get through that?
To be honest with you, no. And I know that might sound, I don't know, arrogant or whatever, but it's not. Because look, here's the thing: you got to remember, like, we had ran a business in one of the most expensive parts of the world, ran a services business based on human beings. And then we end up in a place where, just to be very honest, the unit economics made sense. Sold in dollars, paid in a ringgit. Had the cost base of raw talent, connecting it to global access. Then at the same time, understanding that I could go outside and eat for $2. And at that point in time, knowing and understanding that unless I'm a complete moron or irresponsible or unaccountable, there is no way you can't make this business work. So at that moment in time, it was double down time because it was understanding, again, the economics of the country, its relativeness to the world, within the industry, within how this all cycles together. That's how we understood things. And we had the benefit of what had been our Amsterdam operations and haven't been in the business since 2001. So what, we'd been around for 10 years, 9 years, to call it that way. And then effectively got to slingshot our way forward. I guess the thing is, what you would say is this, is that because we already had it hard, whatever Malaysia or being in a new country would throw at us was quite easy because we already knew what it was when you're economically constrained. And let's be clear, like, the worst thing is to be economically constrained. Try not having money. Try not being able to pay your rent, pay your bills, have food. Because at that moment in time, all these words don't mean shit because I can't eat. And that is something that when you begin to realize and then truly understand that, everything else is a joke. And that's how we got through everything, because you understand the higher order. There is a reality. And let's be clear, money is a universal language. All countries, all regions, all dispositions understand having it and not having it.
It's a lot of hard work. I mean, from your vantage point, I would say you have seen things rise and fall, and you still managed to survive. And that really says something. And you learned a lot. You learned a lot about what outsourcing in code development really looked like. You know how it can fail. And you took those failures and you made it into something. Do you want to talk a little bit about Steam Frame?
Yeah. So here's the thing. Going back to pattern recognition, I think is what it comes down to, is that basically, in the end of the day, live long enough, go through cycles enough, write things down, find the links, reapply them to your learning. Watch a child growing up. I have 3 children. I've watched them grow, watching how children learn through play, learn through failure, learn through the ups and downs, just like a business, same thing. As a human being, same thing, and then apply it. So when we looked at development and we looked at production, we knew through the successes, the failures, the communications, there's a better way to make something because we've made it so many times. We took that knowledge, enshrined it into code. Code becomes law. Law becomes the way you execute. That level of removing the redundant, the remedial, the repetitive, so that the human can live in their zone of genius is literally what we do with Streamframe. We don't want people to be the best pattern recognition person when a computer can do that. I want them to make great art. I want them to make great designs. What I don't want them to do is the best spreadsheet manager, the best data entry person, the best person to basically filter alphabetically. I'm not doing that. So we started to develop technology, Streamframe specifically, to run our organization on a global level, production level, studio level, and ultimately for me to be able to make decisions without having to ask too many people what's going on. Because again, we've seen the cycle, we've seen the pattern, we understand what things look like. We've lived all the hype for 25 years. And the one thing I know to be true is that this bandwagon of jump on the latest trend is exactly what this industry is about. And then at the same time, it's also about the bloodletting. So let's be super clear about this. The volatility of the video games industry is the feature. Empires rise and fall, fortunes are made and they're lost. Yet at the same time, that's what allows the new blood to come in and ride the train up or ride it back down. Also for the old blood to do the same. But there's a key: technology, if applied appropriately, levels out that curve of the peak and the valley. When you harmonize it in, you don't die by falling. So this is the key that I would always just tell people to understand, is that if you truly think about this business, then you really have to insulate and protect your business from the peaks and valleys, the troughs that kill, the up and to the right. As long as it tracks up and to the right, you're winning.
When you talk about making decisions, have there ever been something that looked really good on paper that fit on checked all the boxes, but didn't fit principles or numbers?
That's HR. That's it. I mean, let's be honest. Everything looks good on paper. You don't know until you're in it. And the thing is, computers are computers, but human beings are human beings. And I think that in the end, we have to be honest also about the industry where everything can be made to look and feel better than it is or worse than it is, but you don't know until you're in the shit. Then you find out. So I think the thing is, what I would just say is this, like, if there was anything there, hiring decisions have always been the one thing that I look back on and be like, oh, here we go. That would always be it. It's never about software. It's never about like, we should have, because you know what, in the end of the day, it's technology. And the aggravation is not technology. The consternation is always the fact that you deal with humans and humans have their quirks, which goes back to what we said at the beginning. Being conflict avoidant, non-confrontational is the fastest way to being broke in this business. You just cannot be that way. That's so just link this to one simple thing. The entire lesson of a career, learn to tell the truth and be comfortable in how uncomfortable that is, because you are not going to make everyone happy. And that's the thing. Anyone out there who's, I want to be a CEO. Okay. Let me tell you, that is the worst job. At the same time, the thing is, what makes it work is that if you're willing to be accountable to your people and to circumstances that you did not create, but now you must solve. That's all that is. And you got to be comfortable with uncomfortable things. That's just what it is.
And carry it off with grace. Some people are cold, and I've never seen you be cold towards any of the people that have worked with you. It's always been like, this is a great work experience. So I've never heard anyone say anything negative about you. Okay, so I have seen so many successes come out of Streamline. Tell me how, after being a gun for hire, so to speak, a collaborator with other major studios, did you decide that you wanted to create something internally?
So here's the funny secret about Streamline is that Streamline started off as a game developer because we were game developers, but the only way we could pay for our games back in 2001 was to sell our services by day so we could make our games at night, which is what we did. And at that time, we didn't know that this was going to become an actual industry, a portion of our industry, or become how we would make money. We were just trying to find our next title. We just happened to be very good at providing services and being very clear at how to do the work. So it was always something we were doing. Every year we would have something in development. We were trying something new. And ultimately what we decided was, you know what, if we keep making our own games, that's just the best way for us to upgrade our capabilities and keep being consistent and remain cutting edge. It also is a nice calling card for the industry because they can see how far you can go as an organization. But the other side is no one gets into this business saying, I want to be the person who is the backup singer to a famous band. You want to have your own band. At one point, if you become the backup singer, that's okay. It's a nice life, but nothing stops you from trying to be the front act. And that was something that I always told my team. I said, look, we might be the greatest band you never heard of, but at the same time, it's a living and nothing stops us from keep making our new demo. And that's what we would do. We would just make games, continue making games, and we would release what we wanted to play, which when you look at the curve of our games, you can see a bunch of young 20-something-year-old kids, moody, gothic, to then people with kids. And next thing, we've been releasing kids games because we all had kids. And that started to become that family-friendly business. You literally can see us grow up based on the titles we make. It just became natural. And, it's also expression because I grew up making games because I love playing games. I played them with my brother, played them with my family. And of course, it just makes sense now that when we have kids of our own, I'm like, I want you to come and play my game, right? So it means to an end at that point.
No, but I think that they're fun and beautiful games, and they have personality, and there's something, there's a comfort to them. So I really have We will put your links to your games in
No,
the
thank
show
you.
notes
Yeah,
so people will be able to play them. I really think
that's
that it's
cool.
important that we let people know that you also make these great games. You just don't work
Yeah.
for everybody
No.
else, even though you do work for a lot of cool
Well,
projects.
yeah, you do. I think you have to, you follow your heart. That's okay. So that's the thing. So it's a dichotomy that on one side, we make money with bang, boom, boom, which is shooting and blowing things up. And then we have these family games that are about teamwork and playing together. And they're so different, yet so the same. They're the versions of a personality where you do what you have to do, but you have a heart. And these two worlds connect. And I think ultimately, in the end, when you look at the games, and for anyone out there who's listening to this, you have to make what you want to make, man. If you're going to walk through this hell at this business, there better be a reward for you. Even if it is you and your mom and your cousin only playing your game, it's still your game. That is the key. Or else, why would you do this? Because there's so many other ways to make money.
It is by far one of the hardest ways to make money and to be in charge. Also, again, it's another layer of difficulty. It isn't just making the games, it's then being responsible for all these other people's lives. And then your partners are like a marriage, and you have to
Yeah.
work at it just like you do a relationship. So it's a lot to take on. And one of the things that I know about you is that you went from building games and all of these things, and you realized that you needed something else, and you went off and you got a business degree. And I thought that was interesting to throw into the middle of your career, to decide at that late date that you wanted an MBA. Why did you decide to do that? And why was it important to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I attended a program at Harvard called OPM, which is actually they took their MBA program and then they combined it with people who basically have built businesses of significance and combined it together. So real world experience meets book knowledge to connect it. You have to remember, like when we started Streamline, I was 20 years old. I was the only one that had actually had a job before. I was actually doing IT and information security. The key is that I never finished university. I had a high school diploma. And I think that there was a moment in time where I realized, roughly when I was 35, before our first child was born, that I wanted to understand more than just what I could read on my own. And the thing is, I love reading and I love puzzling and I love trying to solve things. But there's a moment in time where you have to be humble and you have to realize there might be other people who know more. And if you can get access to those people, why wouldn't you? So when I was in my 20s, I had tried to get into the OPM program. Actually, I was 24, 25 when I tried to get into OPM. Wasn't allowed in, too young. So 10 years later, I came back and tried and they let me in. And it was the greatest experience of my life. Of course, Harvard's incredible and it's a great school. It has amazing thinking and the campus is important. An incredible piece of that is they're the teachers. But really what it was meeting people like me who were self-taught or it found themselves in a position where they needed to learn more and they wanted to apply themselves and to make relationships with people that I had never met before that were similar to me. So the education plus the network plus the understanding of life outside of the video game space, that's really what it came down to. And then ultimately also just as a human being, wanting to know that this wasn't just some accident. Like I didn't just, oh, it just accidentally happened. It accidentally worked out. And, there might be people be like, okay, how can it accidentally happen? There are some people that get lucky. I wasn't born lucky, but I'm hardworking. And so what I wanted to see was what happens if hardworking meets formal education and an understanding. And that's what I got. And that one decision, like, just very honest with you, if you were to look at this on a revenue map, going to that school unlocked what I would then say at least 10x because it went from like here to here. That's the difference that it made. And so that's why I'm a person who always say about education. Okay, you went to college, cool. You don't have to go to college to make video games. If there's one business where really that doesn't matter, it's this one. Yet, if you do go, you need to learn things that are probably outside of your core. And those things will make the difference. So let's be clear. I didn't go to Harvard to learn video games. I went to Harvard because we were going to learn about business and what it means to operate and grow a business from 10 million to a billion. Let's just use that number. That way of thinking, that way of understanding, that way of being able to interrogate yourself and at the same time see the world for what it is, not what you'd like it to be, that was the difference.
One of the things that I know about you is that you've always been curious. And despite not going to college, you always made sure you were educating yourselves, all of you. But additionally, like I saw you go out of your way to teach a lot of people what you learned. And that's another thing that it's really hard to describe what the giving back is, but I think that has also been a big part of who you are. You were a big part of the Global Game Jam, and you were on the board for many years. You helped make and steer a lot of decisions. Additionally, you worked with a lot of other nonprofits and as well as with the people in Malaysia and different NGOs and things going on there. That's been a big part of you. How do you integrate all of that plus have a family and do all of those things? How do you manage to keep yourself whole, not burn out, not fall apart? What are the key
Yeah.
things that make you able to wake up every morning and go off to work at 6 a.m.?
Yeah, it's 4:30 now because of the kids.
Oh, God.
If I want daddy time for me time, it's 4:30 in the morning to 6 a.m. And that's what happens. But okay, I think if you really want to know how good you are at a subject, teach it to someone. If you want to just be very direct, teach, and then you'll find out, are you that good or not? And it's not because of your capability, it's watching the other person's capability grow and they excel and one day surpass you. I think the other side on this is that you come to a moment in time, at least I did in my life, where I read a lot, I executed a lot, I burned my hands every which way, I cut my face on everything. And then I knew that there will be a moment in time where I won't have the energy for this anymore. And that when that day comes, I want to know that whatever this experience was more useful than just the money in my pocket. So being able to provide that to other people was extremely important to me. And I just got to a point where I was like, you know what? If Streamline and myself can help to onboard the global south with anyone who wants to, wherever they are, we're going to do that. And what we're going to do is just be frank and honest and to the point. We're going to take away the decorations and oh, it's all about beauty and this. No, it's not. It's hardcore. This is what it looks like. Because what we're not going to do is basically bring in people who get victimized by it. Because you need to know eyes wide open what it is. Know the game you're playing is basically what that is. At the same time, it's not gloom and doom. It's beautiful, but you have to be honest about it. And I think this is where, when you look at the writing and you look at the videos and you look at the stuff that we've done as an organization, we always come back to a core center that we're eternally grateful and have a lot of gratitude for the opportunities we've had, for the punishments we've taken, for the failures we've had, but we refuse to let them twist and distort our understanding of life. Because in the end of the day, you don't need video games to live. It is such an opportunity to work in this space. But at the same time, we're also not going to say as though it's just the easiest thing ever. And I think those two things being true is what we focus on, to say, look, all the blessings we've ever had, all the opportunities we've ever had, the chances we've had, we're going to give back as much as we can to whoever wants to help or to be a part of it. So, there's a moment in time where you're like, okay, how about we teach some of these kids to actually be in this industry so they too can then move their lives up. So their economic mobility, social economic mobility goes up as well. And they get to inherit this.
Yeah.
And that's effectively what's happened.
As we wind this down, I want to ask you, what is making you excited right now in our industry?
There's actually three major things that I'm excited for right now. Number one is that I'm excited for the next 3 billion people to be joining the games industry. And what I mean by that is the global south, Southeast Asia, Africa, Latin America, Middle East. They're all coming. They're coming, they're playing, they're making great content. They want to be making their own culture. They want to see their imprint on this world and in this industry, which I think is fantastic. So we're going to net positive on that as an industry. The other thing is basically the leveraging of technology. We are seeing our new platform, Streamframe, the new versions coming out here, which we're super excited about. And I love it because I like automation. Again, I want people to live in the zone of genius, their zone of actual maximum capabilities. I don't want them pushing buttons and reading spreadsheets. It's just stupid. Why are we doing that? And then the last thing is really more of a philosophical change of what this industry is becoming. And I think that this is probably the hardest part for people, but the truest part about it. We are going to a Hollywood style production system. The games industry has all but decided that games will be made by teams that build up and build down, scale up and scale down. It will be more of a industry where people work together, but they will not have these formal working relationships. Like being employed, especially in the global north, US, Europe, Canada, where the costs are prohibitive, people will become entrepreneurs. They will become either a band of people that roam together or individual contractors. And yes, I know how scary that is for people to hear, but you have to get past the fear and realize what it means is the freedom, the opportunity to choose and work on what you want, but it does mean becoming responsible for yourself. But I don't think this is just a video game situation. This is the world economy. And the industry has a tendency to react quicker to these changes than other industries do.
It's
So
adaptability. It
100%.
it really is. Besides looking up on YouTube to see video game real talk old episodes, how else should people try to catch up with you or follow your work? Are you starve up on everything?
Yeah, so everyone gets to basically be nauseated with my photography. If they go to my Instagram, they can see my photos, or you can see Alexander in his street photography. So I'll go vomit on them. Starbuck underscore on Instagram and Substack. I actually, on Substack, I release an essay nearly every week about a subject matter, specifically to video games or something related to leadership and management. It's the written form of sending knowledge and spreading the knowledge, like sharing it and say, hey guys, here you go. And again, I'm not going to say what I know is right. All I know is that it worked for me and this is how, and here's where it worked and here's where it failed. But I'm willing to open it up to people because again, I know how hard it is to hear the truth.
Alexander, I want to thank you again. I want to wish you and Streamline the most success. I just can't even tell you how proud I am to remember that 25-year-old I met in Singapore, and I was like, who is this guy? He's just a baby and he's telling people like the truth. And I'm like, ooh, I want to know you. And then we turned into family. So I feel so fortunate. Thank you so much for being a part of the podcast, for being a part of our industry, and for sharing the knowledge and things that you have experienced. I truly appreciate it, Alexander. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. And again, thanks for everything you do. It's been fun.
Thank you.
Want to get involved with the GGJ podcast? We'd love to hear from you. Please send your ideas, suggestions, and questions to ggjpod@globalgamejam.org. And tell us who you think we should be talking to next, what stories or issues matter most to you about the future of games, and help us highlight the people and practices that make a sustainable creative life in games possible. Thank you for spending time with us on the GGJ podcast. If this conversation sparked something for you, please share it with someone who might find it useful. And don't forget to follow along so you never miss new stories from makers around the world. You can find more episodes, resources, and information about the Global Game Jam at globalgamejam.org. Catch us on Substack and on YouTube and anywhere else you find podcasts. This has been the GGJ Podcast. Thanks for listening and keep making games.